There was a family that lived in Bethlehem during the time of the Judges. The time of Judges was a low point in the history of Israel because everyone did what seemed right in their own eyes. It was during this time that a famine arose, and so the man named Elimelech took his family to sojourn in the country of Moab. He left Bethlehem of Israel, which means house of bread, and settled in Moab, a place historically known as enemy territory. What started as sojourning turned into settling. The better thing to do would have been to stay in Israel and endure the famine. As God's people, it would have been best to pray in humble repentance for God to give rain and bring restoration to the land. However, it is often a tactic of man to run from problems. Instead of facing problems, confessing our wrongs, and asking God to restore the situation, we often run away. You can run away to a different place and feel like you have fled the problem, but you still have to deal with yourself, and you are often the problem. Elimelech, whose name ironically means God is my king, did the opposite. He ran from his king. He thought he could be his own king and find a better life. But when we try to find a better life for ourselves, we usually end up in enemy territory. We usually find nothing but bitter loss and destruction. Elimelech died, and shortly after, so did his 2 sons, leaving behind 3 widows, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah. Broken and destitute, the widows received news that God had visited Bethlehem with bread. With no men left in the family to bring care and provision, Naomi decided to go back to Bethlehem. Pressing through the loss and shame, she arose and journeyed home. Coming home is always a good move for the people of God. Naomi commanded her daughters-in-law not to go with her. They still had many years to live with promise of opportunity among their own Moabite people. Naomi, in her old age, would go back home to see what help she might find among her own people. And in an emotional exchange, Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and left her, but Ruth clung to her. Ruth, in her devotion and loyalty, becomes the central figure of the story as God unfolds his redemptive plan through her faithfulness. Ruth goes with Naomi. Naomi's home becomes Ruth's home. The people of Israel become Ruth's people. The God of Israel becomes Ruth's God. And through a kinsman redeemer, Jesus, the Son of God, becomes Ruth's descendant. Without any of this future redemption in sight, Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem, where they are greeted by the town with great excitement. Still broken and destitute, Naomi asks that she be called bitter. Although hope was on the horizon at the beginning of the barley harvest, Naomi was struggling to move beyond bitterness. Yet, God would bring pleasant healing and restoration through a Moabite woman named Ruth, a wonderful piece of his redemptive plan through the ages.